Some companies lose money, others lose wars. But the companies on this list lost so spectacularly, so magnificently stupid, they deserve their own award ceremony. Welcome to the Corporate Darwin Awards. 101 business decisions so dumb, they should be illegal. CEOs who laughed at billion-dollar deals. Executives who destroyed empires with one sentence. Let's get into it. 1. Jewish hero raised $120 million to build a $400 Wi-Fi connected juicer. Then Bloomberg discovered you could squeeze the juice packs by hand just as fast. Investors funded a machine that lost to human fingers. The company died in a year, and somewhere, a venture capitalist is still crying into his artisanal celery blend. 2. Quibi burned $1.75 billion making short videos for people waiting in line at Starbucks. Then the pandemic hit, lines disappeared, and nobody cared about 10-minute shows anyway. 6 months later, they sold everything to Roku for pocket change. Nearly $2 billion for 6 months of content nobody watched. Efficiency. 3. Gerald Ratner built the UK's biggest jewelry chain and destroyed it in 11 seconds. During a speech, he joked his products were total crap and cheaper than a prawn sandwich. Stock crashed £500 million overnight. They literally invented a new term for this: doing a Ratner. The man became a verb for stupidity. 4. Hoover UK promised free flights to America for anyone buying a 100-pound vacuum cleaner. Seemed clever until 300,000 people bought vacuums specifically for the flights. Hoover lost £50 million, got sued into oblivion, and learned that free is the most expensive word in marketing. 5. Blockbuster laughed Netflix out of the room in 2000 when Reed Hastings offered to sell for $50 million. The Blockbuster CEO thought DVDs by mail was adorable. Netflix is now worth over $250 billion. Blockbuster has one store left, in Alaska, which honestly is the perfect metaphor for their strategic vision. 6. Circuit City decided their best salespeople were too expensive in 2007, so they fired 3,400 of them and hired minimum wage replacements. Customers noticed immediately. 2 years later, Circuit City was dead. They saved a few million in salary and lost a multi-billion-dollar company. Math checks out. 7. Kodak invented the digital camera in 1975. Their own engineers showed them the future. And Kodak said, "Cool, let's bury this because it might hurt film sales." Digital cameras happened anyway, made by everyone except Kodak. They filed for bankruptcy while holding the patent for the technology that killed them. That's not irony. That's art. 8. New Coke, 1985. Coca-Cola looked at the most successful product in human history and thought, let's fix it. People lost their minds. There were protests, hotlines were flooded. They brought back the original in 79 days. The lesson? When you're printing money, maybe don't redesign the printer. 9. Pets.com spent $300 million on a sock puppet mascot and Super Bowl ads, while selling dog food at a loss. Their business model was lose money on every order but make it up in volume. Spoiler, that's not how volume works. The sock puppet is now a symbol of dot-com stupidity. He outlived the company by decades. 10. MoviePass offered unlimited movies for $10 a month in 2017. They paid theaters full price for every ticket. Anyone with a calculator could see this was suicide. They lost money on literally every single customer, burned through hundreds of millions, and collapsed, leaving behind nothing but a business school case study titled, "What is Math?" 11. Target entered Canada in 2013 with 133 stores. Shelves were empty. Prices were wrong. Customers were confused. They lost $7 billion in 2 years and closed everything. They somehow managed to have too little inventory and too much inventory at the same time. That takes talent. 12. Ron Johnson left Apple to fix JCPenney in 2012. His genius idea: eliminate coupons and sales. JCPenney's entire customer base exists for coupons and sales. Sales dropped 25% in 1 year. He lasted 17 months. Turns out people buying discount socks are not the same as people buying iPhones. 13. The Osborne Computer Company announced their next model way too early in 1983. Customers stopped buying the current one to wait. Sales collapsed instantly. Bankruptcy followed. Now every business school teaches the Osborne effect. Congratulations on becoming a cautionary tale with your own Wikipedia entry. 14. Schlitz was America's best-selling beer in the 1970s. Then they secretly cheapened the recipe to save money. Customers noticed their beer tasted like sadness. Sales collapsed so hard the original recipe got lost forever. They literally cost-cut themselves out of existence. Cheers to that. 15. In 1999, Excite could have bought Google for $750,000. The CEO passed. Today, Google is worth over $2 trillion. Excite is so dead, most people reading this just said, "What's Excite?" That's the legacy, a question mark. 16. Xerox invented the graphical user interface, the mouse, and basically modern computing at their Palo Alto Research Center. Then they showed it to Steve Jobs because, sure, why not? Apple built the Macintosh. Xerox continued making copiers. They photocopied their way out of tech history. 17. Yahoo turned down buying Google for $1 million in 1998. Then again for $5 billion in 2002. Google wanted $5. Yahoo said no. Today, Google makes $5 billion in about a week. Yahoo got sold for parts to Verizon. Some companies just have a gift for missing opportunities. Twice. 18. eBay bought Skype for $2.6 billion in 2005, thinking people would video chat while bidding on vintage lamps. Nobody did. They took a $1.4 billion write-down and sold most of it. Microsoft later bought Skype for $8.5 billion. eBay's timing was impressively wrong. 19. Sprint merged with Nextel in 2005 for $36 billion. Small problem, their networks were completely incompatible. Customers fled. Sprint eventually wrote off $30 billion and nearly died. It was like an arranged marriage where neither person speaks the same language. Literally. 20. Quaker Oats bought Snapple for $1.7 billion in 1994, dreaming of Gatorade-level success. 27 months later, they sold it for $300 million. That's losing $1.6 million per day of ownership, every single day. They should have just set the money on fire. It would have been warmer. 21. AOL and Time Warner merged in 2000 for $164 billion. The idea was old media meets new internet. By 2002, they posted a $99 billion loss, the worst in corporate history. They created the largest money bonfire ever assembled and called it Synergy. 22. MySpace sold to News Corp for $580 million in 2005, the king of social media. Rupert Murdoch immediately cluttered it with ads and spam. Users fled to cleaner Facebook. By 2011, it sold for $35 million, from $580 to $35 million in 6 years. That's not depreciation, that's a crime scene. 23. Decca Records rejected the Beatles in 1962, saying, "Guitar groups are on their way out." The Beatles became the best-selling band in human history. Decca became that one company everyone mentions when discussing how to catastrophically misread talent. Immortalized forever. Just not the way they wanted. 24. Western Union called Alexander Graham Bell's telephone a useless toy in 1876 and refused to buy the patent for $100,000. 2 years later, they desperately tried to compete. Today, Western Union helps people send money. Bell's little toy built AT&T. Totally useless, though. 25. Mars rejected having M&Ms appear in E.T. because apparently aliens were too weird for chocolate. Hershey said yes with Reese's Pieces. Sales jumped 65% after the movie. Somewhere, that Mars executive is still haunted by a tiny alien eating competitor candy. 26. Theranos promised revolutionary blood testing from a finger prick. Elizabeth Holmes raised billions, fooled Walgreens, Safeway, and Henry Kissinger. The technology never actually worked. She's now serving 11 years in prison. Silicon Valley's longest con ended in an orange jumpsuit. 27. The Keurig Cold was a $370 machine that made one room temperature soda very slowly. You could walk to a store and buy a cold Coke faster. It launched in 2015 and died in 2016. Sometimes innovation is just making simple things complicated and expensive. This was exactly that. 28. Atari made the E.T. video game in 5 weeks to catch Christmas 1982. It was so unplayably bad they buried millions of copies in a New Mexico landfill. It helped crash the entire video game industry. 5 weeks of development. Decades of shame. 29. WeWork was valued at $47 billion before its IPO filing. Then people actually read it and discovered it was a real estate company led by a guy who wanted to live forever and become president of the world. Valuation crashed to under $10 billion in weeks. Reading documents matters. 30. Webvan raised $800 million to deliver groceries in 1999. They built giant warehouses before having enough customers to fill a shopping cart. Burned through everything and died in 2001. The idea works great now. They were just 2 decades and $800 million too early. 31. Radio Shack rebranded to The Shack in 2009 to seem cool and modern. Nobody asked. Nobody cared. It solved exactly 0 of their actual problems. They went bankrupt in 2015 and again in 2017. A new name doesn't fix a broken business. It just gives the funeral home updated paperwork. 32. Polaroid invented instant photography, then completely ignored digital cameras. Filed for bankruptcy in 2001. The cruel joke? Instant photography is trendy again now. Polaroid owned the past and the future, but somehow missed the present entirely. 33. HP merged with Compaq in 2002 for $25 billion, despite literally everyone saying it was stupid. CEO Carly Fiorina pushed through anyway. It went terribly. She got fired. The company still hasn't fully recovered. When everyone says don't, maybe that's valuable data. 34. Microsoft spent $7.6 billion buying Nokia's phone division in 2014 to compete in smartphones. By 2015, they wrote off almost all of it and fired 7,800 people. They bought a sinking ship and acted surprised when it sank. At least the Titanic had good music. 35. Gap redesigned their logo in 2010 after spending millions on branding experts. The internet hated it with the passion of 1,000 suns. They changed it back in 6 days. 6 days. Most New Year's resolutions last longer. They pretended nothing happened. We remember Gap. 36. Nokia owned 51% of the mobile phone market in 2007. Then the iPhone launched and Nokia executives literally laughed, saying touchscreens would never replace keyboards. 6 years later, they sold their phone business to Microsoft. Microsoft then destroyed it. A perfect chain of disasters. 37. Tropicana redesigned their orange juice carton in 2009, and sales dropped 20% in 1 month. Customers couldn't find their juice. It looked too different. They panicked and switched back immediately. A carton design change cost them millions. Sometimes boring packaging is good packaging. 38. FTX was a $32 billion crypto empire. Then everyone discovered Sam Bankman-Fried was using customer deposits for risky bets and Bahamas real estate. It collapsed in 4 days. He got 25 years in prison. His entire exchange was built on vibes and other people's money. 39. Google Glass launched in 2013 for $500. People wearing them got called glass holes. Bars banned them. Privacy concerns exploded. Google quietly discontinued them. The future of wearable computing arrived and everyone said, "Please take that off, you look ridiculous." 40. Colgate made frozen dinners called Colgate Kitchen Entrees in the 1980s. Toothpaste company, frozen beef, lasagna. Customers couldn't separate fresh breath from dinner. It died immediately. Brand extensions have limits. Nobody wants minty fresh memories while eating spaghetti. 41. DeLorean launched a stainless steel gullwing sports car in 1981. Looked incredible. Problem: it was underpowered, overpriced, and the company collapsed in 2 years. The car only became iconic because of Back to the Future, not sales. Hollywood saved what engineering couldn't. 42. Hertz bought 100,000 Teslas for $4.2 billion in 2021, thinking electric was the future of car rentals. Maintenance was expensive, repairs were slow, depreciation was brutal. They lost $2.9 billion selling them off. The future arrived, and it was very, very expensive. 43. Borders bookstores outsourced their online sales to Amazon in 2001. They handed their customers, their data, and their entire future to their biggest competitor. Amazon grew into a monster. Borders went bankrupt in 2011. This is called helping dig your own grave with enthusiasm. 44. Yahoo bought Tumblr for $1.1 billion in 2013. Then they banned adult content, which was basically Tumblr's entire reason for existing. In 2019, it sold for $3 million. From $1.1 billion to $3 million is a 99.7% loss. That's almost a perfect score, just completely inverted. 45. Amazon made the Fire Phone in 2014 with a weird 3D gimmick nobody wanted. It cost $200 with a contract. Nobody bought it. Amazon took a $170 million write-off. Even Amazon, the company that sells literally everything, found something people refused to purchase. 46. Crystal Pepsi launched in 1992, hoping clear soda was the future. It tasted like Pepsi but looked like water, and that confused everyone's brain. Gone by 1994, sometimes transparent isn't better. Sometimes it's just unsettling. The 90s were weird. 47. Twitter bought Vine in 2012 for $30 million before it even launched. Vine became massive with teenagers. Then Twitter killed it in 2016 while TikTok was emerging with the exact same format. They owned the predecessor to the biggest video trend ever and murdered it. 48. Penn Central formed in 1968 when two dying railroads merged, hoping two sick companies equaled one healthy one. 2 years later, it was the largest bankruptcy in American history at the time. Two drowning people grabbed each other and both went under. 49. Sears was Amazon before Amazon existed. Catalog business, distribution network, customer trust, credit cards. They could have dominated e-commerce. Instead, they did absolutely nothing and went bankrupt while Amazon became worth $2 trillion. The future was theirs. They just didn't want it. 50. BlackBerry dominated smartphones with physical keyboards. When the iPhone launched, executives asked if it was a Mac in a phone. They refused touchscreens until way too late. Market share went from 50% to basically zero. Stubbornness isn't a business strategy. It's a suicide note. 51. Boo.com burned through $188 million in 18 months selling fashion online in 1999. They spent millions on advertising before the website even worked properly. The site was so slow, most visitors gave up loading it. They advertised something customers literally couldn't access. 52. The Fire Festival promised a luxury island experience for thousands of dollars. Guests arrived to disaster relief tents and sad cheese sandwiches. Billy McFarland got 6 years for fraud. He's now planning Fire Festival 2. Some people treat prison as an internship, apparently. 53. Netflix almost killed itself in 2011 by announcing Quickster, a plan to split DVD and streaming into separate services with separate logins. Stock dropped 77%. They killed Quickster 3 weeks later and pretended it never happened. We all saw it, Reed. We all remember. 54. Mattel bought the Learning Company for $3.5 billion in 1999, their biggest acquisition ever. The Learning Company lost $206 million the next quarter alone. Mattel sold it for essentially nothing a year later. Due diligence exists for a reason. Barbie's accountants were apparently on vacation. 55. Daimler merged with Chrysler in 1998 for $37 billion, marketed as a merger of equals. Cultural clashes made it a disaster from day one. Germans and Americans couldn't agree on anything. Daimler eventually paid billions to get rid of Chrysler. Paying for a divorce from a company you paid to marry? 56. Toshiba bet everything on HD DVD in the format war against Blu-ray. They spent hundreds of millions on marketing and production. Warner Brothers switched to Blu-ray and killed them instantly. Toshiba lost nearly $1 billion and had to announce defeat in a press conference. That looked painful. 57. Silicon Valley Bank collapsed in 48 hours in 2023. They invested deposits in long-term bonds that lost value when interest rates rose. Tech startups panicked and withdrew everything at once. Classic bank run. Second largest bank failure in American history. All because someone forgot about interest rates. 58. Smith Corona was the typewriter king. When computers and word processors emerged, they called them fads. Filed for bankruptcy in 1995, then again in 2000. Their factories now make thermal labels for shipping. From typewriters to shipping labels is quite a career change. 59. General Motors ignored Japanese fuel-efficient cars for decades while building giant SUVs. When gas prices spiked and the economy crashed, they needed a $50 billion government bailout in 2009. What's good for GM, apparently, sometimes means what's expensive for taxpayers. 60. Long-term capital management was a hedge fund run by two Nobel Prize winners who thought they'd solve the market. Their models failed to predict real human behavior. Nearly collapsed the global financial system in 1998. The Federal Reserve organized a bailout. Genius has limits. 61. Toys. R Us took on $5 billion in debt during a 2005 buyout, then couldn't invest in stores or e-commerce. Amazon ate their lunch. They filed for bankruptcy in 2017 and closed all U.S. stores. Jeffrey the Giraffe was killed by leveraged buyouts, not kids growing up. 62. Napster invented music streaming, but gave it away for free. Record labels sued them into oblivion by 2001. Spotify later proved the model could work with licensing. Napster had the right idea and the wrong business model. Piracy is not a sustainable revenue stream. 63. Bear Stearns was the fifth largest investment bank in America. In March 2008, it collapsed in 4 days and sold to JP Morgan for $10 a share. It had been $170 a year earlier. 4 days to destroy 85 years of history. Wall Street is brutal. 64. Gateway had those quirky cow-spotted boxes and was a major PC brand. They diversified into plasma TVs and retail stores that nobody wanted. Acer bought them in 2007 for $710 million. The cows went to pasture. Nobody misses the cow boxes. Okay, maybe some people miss the cow boxes. 65. Motorola invented the cell phone. Like, actually invented it. Then they kept making flip phones while smartphones emerged. Google bought them for $12.5 billion in 2012, mostly for patents, then sold to Lenovo for $2.9 billion. From inventor to spare parts dealer. 66. Sega released the Saturn in 1995 with almost no warning, surprising retailers and developers who had no games ready. Sony launched PlayStation months later at a lower price with better games. Sega never recovered. They make games now, for PlayStation. The irony is thick. 67. Nortel was the largest company in Canada and a telecom giant worth $250 billion at peak. Accounting fraud inflated their stock during the dot-com boom. When it crashed, 60,000 employees lost jobs. Canada's Enron, basically. Maple syrup couldn't save them. 68. Sports Authority took on too much debt during private equity ownership, couldn't compete with Amazon or Dick's Sporting Goods, and liquidated 450 stores in 2016. Their empty buildings still haunt strip malls across America. Authority? More like surrender. 69. Craftsman tools were sold by Sears to Stanley Black & Decker for $900 million in 2017. Sears spent decades building that brand loyalty. Now you buy Craftsman at Lowe's. Sears sold their crown jewels and still went bankrupt anyway. Impressive mismanagement on multiple levels. 70. Tower Records was the coolest place to buy music until downloads arrived. They expanded aggressively right as CDs became obsolete, filed for bankruptcy twice, and closed all 89 US stores in 2006. The last record they played was their own funeral march. 71. Sun Microsystems turned down multiple acquisition offers in the 2000s. including reportedly $7 billion from IBM. They held out for more. Oracle eventually bought them in 2009 for $7.4 billion, but only after massive decline. Pride is expensive. Patience, too. 72. Six Flags took on massive debt, expanding and buying parks everywhere. They filed for bankruptcy in 2009. The roller coaster company had its own financial roller coaster. Except theirs only went down. New owners emerged, but the debt binge almost ended the fun forever. 73. Krispy Kreme expanded from 140 to 400 stores between 2000 and 2004. Donuts everywhere. Two everywhere. Sales per store collapsed because scarcity made them special. They closed hundreds of locations. Turns out donuts taste better when you can't get them on every corner. 74. Washington Mutual became the largest bank failure in American history in 2008, with $307 billion in assets. They gave mortgages to everyone breathing. JP Morgan bought their remains for $1.9 billion. That's cents on the dollar. Literally pennies on the dollar. 75. Enron was named America's most innovative company by Fortune magazine for 6 consecutive years. Then collapsed in 2001 from massive accounting fraud. Executives went to prison, employees lost everything, and Arthur Andersen died too. Innovation in creative accounting counts as crime. 76. Pan Am was once the most glamorous airline on Earth. They ordered 25 Boeing 747s without having enough passengers to fill them. Debt mounted, terrorism struck, competition increased. They collapsed in 1991, flying too close to the sun, except with jumbo jets. 77. British Petroleum's cost-cutting on the Deepwater Horizon rig led to the worst oil spill in American history in 2010. 11 workers died. Cleanup and fines cost over $65 billion. Saving money on safety is never actually saving money. It's just delayed spending, with interest. 78. Compaq bought Digital Equipment Corporation for $9.6 billion in 1998, the largest tech acquisition at the time. They had no idea what to do with it. Compaq itself got absorbed by HP 4 years later. Expensive, confused acquisitions rarely end well for anyone except the lawyers. 79. The BlackBerry Playbook tablet launched in 2011 without native email capability. A BlackBerry product, without email. Their literal core competency since forever. They launched it anyway, and it flopped immediately. That's like Ferrari releasing a car without an engine. 80. Groupon turned down a $6 billion acquisition offer from Google in 2010. Their IPO valued them at $12.7 billion. Now they trade under $1 billion. The daily deal model collapsed. Google's $6 billion looks really good in hindsight. Really, really good. 81. GoPro was worth $11.6 billion in 2014. They tried making drones that kept falling out of the sky and crashing. Stock dropped 95%. They're still around but never recovered. Sometimes you should stick to what you know. Cameras don't need to fly. 82. Blue Apron went public at $3 billion in 2017. Meal kits were supposedly the future of food. Customer acquisition costs were insane, and nobody stayed subscribed for long. Stock dropped over 90%. Turns out people don't want to cook that much after all. 83. Kmart somehow acquired Sears in 2005 through a merger engineered by hedge fund manager Eddie Lampert. He then systematically stripped both companies of value for over a decade. Both went bankrupt. He bought Sears out of bankruptcy and it's still dying. Some people just like watching things burn. 84. IBM sold their entire personal computer division to Lenovo for $1.75 billion in 2005. They thought hardware was dead and services were the future. The PC market kept growing. Lenovo became one of the world's largest computer makers. IBM left money on the table. 85. AOL spent billions buying companies like Netscape, MapQuest, and ICQ during the dot-com boom. Most faded into complete irrelevance. They sold ICQ for $187 million in 2010, after buying it for $407 million in 1998. Collecting companies is not a strategy. 86. Reebok had a massive hit with the Terry Tate office linebacker ads in the early 2000s, then signed an exclusive 11-year NFL deal that locked out Nike and Adidas. When it ended in 2012, Nike swooped in. Reebok lost their biggest athletic credibility platform. 87. Snapchat rejected Facebook's $3 billion buyout offer in 2013. Risky move against Zuckerberg. It actually worked out. Snapchat is now worth over $20 billion. This is the rare case where saying no to Facebook didn't result in being copied into oblivion immediately. 88. Adam Neumann, WeWork's founder, cashed out over $700 million before the company imploded. He sold shares, took loans against stock, got a huge payout in the failed IPO bailout. The company lost billions. He bought mansions. Somebody definitely won, just not investors. 89. Lehman Brothers survived 158 years, including the Civil War, the Great Depression, and 2 world wars. In September 2008, they became the largest bankruptcy in American history. 25,000 employees lost jobs in one weekend. The building sold to Barclays for essentially nothing. 90. Segway was supposed to revolutionize transportation. Steve Jobs said cities would be built around it. Jeff Bezos invested. The hype was nuclear. Then it launched and turned out to be a $5,000 scooter for mall cops and tourists. The inventor later died riding one off a cliff. The universe has a dark sense of humor. 91. Netflix turned down Jeff Bezos in 1998 when Amazon offered to buy them for around $15 million. They said no and built a $250 billion company instead. Sometimes saying no to Bezos works out. This is the exception, not the rule. 92. Office Depot and Office Max merged in 2013 thinking bigger would help fight Amazon and Staples. It didn't. They just became a bigger, slower target. The combined company continues struggling. 2 drowning office supply stores grabbing each other didn't help either swim. 93. Uber had so many scandals in 2017 that Delete Uber became a nationwide movement. Sexual harassment accusations, CEO caught screaming at a driver, Waymo lawsuit. Over 200,000 people deleted the app. Travis Kalanick resigned. Toxic culture has actual measurable consequences. 94. Heinz made purple and green ketchup for kids in 2000. Initially sold well because novelty is fun. Then kids grew up and nobody wanted alien-colored condiments on their fries anymore. Discontinued in 2006. Some innovations should remain in the rejected ideas folder. 95. McDonald's tried selling pizza in the 1990s called McPizza. It took 11 minutes to cook, which is an eternity in fast food. The concept contradicted everything McDonald's represented. They quietly killed it except for one giant location in Florida where dreams go to be weird. 96. Zillow decided their algorithm was smart enough to flip houses in 2021. They bought thousands of homes at prices their own computer suggested. The algorithm was wrong. They lost $881 million and had to fire 2,000 people. Turns out real estate is harder than a spreadsheet thinks. 97. Theranos put Henry Kissinger on their board. They put James Mattis on their board. They put George Shultz on their board. None of these extremely credentialed people thought to ask if the blood testing technology actually worked. It didn't. Credentials aren't due diligence. 98. New Balance praised the Trump administration in 2016 for opposing trade deals. Delete New Balance became a trend. People burned their shoes. The company scrambled to clarify their position. Sometimes staying out of politics is the actual smart business decision. 99. Reddit users on Wall Street Bets noticed GameStop was heavily shorted by hedge funds in 2021. They bought the stock en masse. Melvin Capital lost $4.5 billion in 1 month. A hedge fund got destroyed by people posting rocket emojis. The future is genuinely strange. 100. Ford spent $250 million in the 1950s developing the Edsel, the most researched car in history. Focus groups, surveys, everything. It launched in 1958 and became the biggest flop in automotive history. The name Edsel is now literally a synonym for failure. That's the only legacy that survived. 101. And finally, the executive at NBC who passed on Monday Night Football to launch the XFL in 2001 deserves recognition. The XFL folded after one season of embarrassing ratings. Monday Night Football went to ESPN and remained hugely profitable for decades. Whoever made that call hopefully found a new career. Far away from television. 101 ways to burn money and become a business school warning. And somewhere right now, some executive is cooking up number 102. So here's the deal. Comment the company you think is currently making the dumbest decision that'll land them on a future list. Name names. Get specific. Explain why. I want to see predictions, like if you've ever worked somewhere this stupid. Subscribe to watch the next disaster together.